How's it going, everyone? Adam again from Sinister Custom Cycles. So today we're finally going to do the video on the crank bearings that I've been talking about for quite a few videos now. Finally going to get around to it here. So right into it here. Right on the crank arm. It's going to be already assembled, so hopefully you guys can make sense of this. So around the crank arm, where it goes through here, there's a little gap, probably about 1/16th to about 1/16th of an inch. And the only thing, if it wasn't for the bearings in there, this shaft would flop around with that play around the shaft. The only thing that's keeping it solid is those bearings. And I'll show you what happened to the bearings that came with the kit after not even 20 miles. I tightened it up and I did a little bit of pedaling with it on takeoffs, things like that, or pedaling backwards for the coaster brake. And it kept on loosening up almost immediately. And this is why. So on the right here, you can kind of see the pieces of the cage. So it pretty much just disintegrated. The one on the left side is just missing a bearing, but it's still pretty well intact. So this side here, I lost all my bearings. They were bouncing around inside the frame in between here. And what that did is, like I said, it was loosening up, and this shaft here was moving all around because it's got that about a 1/16th inch gap around there. Now it wasn't just flopping around, it was also causing alternating chain tension. Depending on which side I was putting pressure on, as far as pedaling, my chain would either be so loose it would be sagging and pretty much ready to fall off, or it would be so tight that you couldn't even move it. So it's not only bad for the chain as far as stretching and premature wear, it's also going to put a lot of pressure on the bearings on the back sprocket as well. So a lot of things that I was doing that were negative as far as that. So I did a lot of research. I found there's probably about 4 different kits out there. And one kit I found was phenomenal. Sealed bearings, press-in bearings, really high quality parts. But shipped is about $200 just for the bearings, the center shaft, crank arms, and the sprocket. Whereas this kit, if you want to buy it separate, you're looking at about $35. $200, I was about to spend it, but if I'm selling these things, I want quality, but there's a point how much I want to sell these things for. I know some people are they're getting $2, $3, $4 grand for them, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm not paying $4 grand for a pedal bike with a motor on it. So I knew there had to be a different way to do it that wouldn't be that much money and would work a whole lot better. So I did some thinking, and I finally figured it out one night. So kind of back to the bearings here. So you see this bearing cage here? You have 1/4 inch ball bearings in there, and they're just held in a very cheap, cheesy cage. There's only one purpose for that cage, and that's to keep the bearings in place and make installation easy. So you can just pop that bearing cage on the shaft, both sides, and holds bearings in place while you put everything together. The cage is what was failing though, because you have that spacing in between the bearings. So when I put pressure on that shaft and that shaft got in between the bearings, it would crush that cage, therefore having the bearings fall out, and then, I mean, there was nothing left without those bearings, so it didn't hold up, obviously. So what I did is I just picked up the ball bearings for $3. I think I got about 2 dozen. And then what I did is I cleaned everything up, took everything apart, and then where the bearings would go, I'd put a dot of super glue on the shaft. I'd stick a bearing to it, and then right next to it another dot, another bearing, stick a bearing, another bearing to it, and so on and so forth until I had a straight line of bearings all the way around the shaft. By eliminating that cage, I was able to go from 9 bearings to 11 bearings. And I had a little bit of space, but not much. Always keep in mind that if you do this, and you have a little bit of space at the end between your bearings, don't try and fit another one in there and offset it at all. If you have too many bearings, it's going to bind up and you really, it's just not going to work. So it's okay to have a little bit of space. Either way, eliminating that cage, you're going to be able to add a couple more bearings. That's what's going to save you. And that dotted glue on there, all that glue is doing is kind of taking the place of the cage as far as a purpose. So it's holding the bearings in there until you can get that shaft through there and get your bearing cups on this side screwed in. Once that's in there and you turn this, it's going to knock those bearings loose, and that little bit of glue on there is just going to disintegrate. So that's what I did with this one, and I got 150 miles on it so far. I made it a point to pedal a lot more, to purposely put more stress on it, and it hasn't moved at all. It's still tight as the day as I put it together, and it cost me $3. So not bad at all. Cheap fix, quality, and it's hanging together perfect. So I hope that made sense. Ultimately, I wanted to do it on the new Cheetah build. I want to do it step by step for you guys so you could actually see it. However, with all the issues I had with that build and the different kit that they sent me, the bearings went a different way, so I couldn't really show you. So if you have any questions or anything, please send me pictures. My email is sinistercustomcycles@gmail.com. Send me an email. I'd be more than happy to help you out and maybe explain it different or something like that for you. So that's how I fixed it. It's still working fine. We're just kind of getting into summer here in Minnesota. Well, hopefully. Hasn't really arrived yet. We actually just had frost warnings here in the middle of May. But hopefully it's going to get here soon. I'm going to ride it for the summer. Weather permitting, I'll be putting probably 2,000 to 3,000 miles on this bike throughout the summer, and then when that awful winter season comes along again, I'm going to tear everything down again, and then kind of check for wear on the bearings and all that stuff, and then give you a review over the winter time on what wears out, what doesn't. So that's how I did the bearings. Like I said, any questions or anything, don't be afraid to email me, sinistercustomcycles@gmail.com. Please subscribe, message me on the YouTube too, make a comment, and I'll respond to it as quickly as possible. Usually I get to them within 2 to 3 days. So that's it for this video. The next video I'm going to be doing, probably within a couple days here, a week at the most, will be the gearing. Different gear ratios between this bike and the recent Cheetah build I did. How many teeth difference on the gearing, and also what it did for me as far as performance, torque, things like that. So stay tuned, subscribe, look out for that video. Talk to you guys soon.